To Millennium TV 24. I am Kim Seabrook. You're watching the Good Looking News. And always, you know what I like to do. I like to start off with what's going on right here in our city, New York City. So let's get to this, the eviction situation, right? It's been a very big ordeal these past few months. So let's see what's going on. The state leaders reached a deal to extend the eviction protections until January 15th. Governor Kathy Hochul and state legislative leaders reached an agreement to extend New York's eviction moratorium until January 15th of 2022. And lawmakers will convene at the Capitol in Albany Wednesday at noon for an extraordinary session to approve the continuation of the program. Tuesday evening, Hochul announced that under my watch here in the state of New York, you're not going to exacerbate what is already a crisis in terms of the homelessness problem. Hochul told reporters in the state capital, Albany, and we are not going to allow people who, through no fault of their own, lost income, not able to pay, and facing eviction. The additional 4.5-month time frame comes as New York's COVID-era tenant protections were largely undone by 2 U.S. Supreme Court rulings in recent weeks, and as the state's moratorium was set to expire on Tuesday, August 31st. New York has received $2.7 billion in mostly federal funds through the COVID-19 Emergency Rental Assistance Program, that's the EARP. But it has distributed a mere $203 million to applicants since the program launched on June 1st. So anyone who applies for and qualifies for the ERA program, automatically when you apply, there can be no eviction process commence for a solid year. So I want to make sure you guys heard that, right? So there cannot be any issues when making, if you had applied for this assistance. So again, I'm sorry. Next, we're going to go into and the decisions, wait a minute, on legal for representation and whether to continue any contracts, even though Cuomo is no longer in power. So we're going into a whole nother story, right? His legal troubles are far from over. Numerous district attorneys and other prosecutors are looking into the accusations that were confirmed in the New York Attorney General's report. That, along with looming impeachment, spurred Cuomo's resignation. And that doesn't even include the potential of civil suits brought by his accusers. I apologize, but somehow, some way, my stories got mixed up. But Cuomo still has roughly $18 million in the campaign account, which could more than cover the amount potentially passed on to taxpayers' New York healthcare worker vaccination mandate. The New York State Department of Health has issued emergency temporary regulations and requiring healthcare workers in various settings to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. The healthcare worker vaccination mandate includes most employees of hospitals and nursing homes, employees and other personnel of some additional healthcare facilities and programs are also subject to mandate. Covered workers who did not become vaccinated in time could lose their positions. Given the emergency nature of the regulations, they are only in effect for 90 days. They will expire in late November 2021 unless extended or adopted as permanent regulations. So listen, covered entities, the New York healthcare worker vaccination mandate applies to personnel working for all of the following. So for hospitals, nursing homes, diagnostics and treatment centers, home health agencies, long-term health home care programs, AIDS home care programs, licensed home care services, agencies, hospices, adult care facilities, and most of the mentioned terms are more specifically defined by law or regulations. Generally, private doctors' offices are not directly subject to the vaccination mandate. However, given the array of practice arrangements, providers should carefully consider whether they are covered, right? So here it goes. Covered personnel, the vaccine mandate extends beyond employees of these healthcare providers. It applies to all persons employed or affiliated with a covered entity, whether paid or unpaid, including but not limited to employees, members of the medical and nursing staff, contract staff, students, and volunteers who engage in activities such that if they were infected with COVID-19, they could potentially expose covered personnel, patients, or residents to the disease. This definition is extensive. It may allow healthcare companies some flexibility in who must receive the vaccine. However, it would seem to cover most people other than the patients and the visitors who would come into contact with anyone else. Vaccination requirement. Covered personnel must eventually become fully vaccinated to continue to work, participate in their healthcare positions, and they must at least obtain a first dose by September 27th. If they work in hospitals, or by October 7th, 2021. And if they work in any other covered entity. Healthcare entities must obtain proof of documentation for each worker and retain a copy in personnel or similar files. Employees must comply with privacy requirements. For example, medical documentation must be maintained separately from general employment records under the Americans with Disability Acts. Exemptions. The Department of Health regulations only permit a medical exception to the healthcare worker vaccination mandate. The Commissioner of Health had previously suggested that a religious exemption would be available, but that was dropped. Very interesting. A covered entity may excuse personnel from the vaccine requirement if any licensed physician or certified nurse practitioner certifies that immunization with COVID-19 vaccine is detrimental to the health of a person based upon a pre-existing health condition. Healthcare companies may make any reasonable accommodation for workers with a medical exemption. Any exemption or accommodation must be documented in personnel records, again in compliance with applicable privacy laws. The DOH regulation does not necessarily require companies to make exemptions or accommodations in every instance. They also don't specify, right, whether the accommodations are reasonable. So these questions, they must be analyzed. They must be analyzed on a case-by-case basis. Compliance, the regulations add requirements that covered entities must provide proof of documentation and exemptions to the Department of Health upon request. The regulations do not specify penalties for non-compliance. However, fines or potential loss of license may be possible for violations. But again, what happened last year, they were heroes. Now they are today's unemployed. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. I am Kim Seabrook. You're watching the Good Looking News. We'll be right back on Millennium TV.